Hi and welcome to this video about an upgrade from a standard mechanical drive to an SSD on an Acer laptop. I'll just go through some of the tools we're going to use today. Obviously we've got a new SSD drive and we're going to need a USB to SATA adapter. Next we've got an opening tool and a Phillips 00 screwdriver and a Spudger. The first thing we want to do is open up our SSD and connect with the USB adapter. So we just plug it in and then hook up to a USB drive. Just make sure you've got it on the right side of the laptop and plug it into the fastest USB port that you've got. This particular laptop's got a USB 3. That'll help for the transfer speeds once we get it all hooked up. Now I'm just going to transfer over to the Windows so you can see what's going on with Windows itself. And here we go. I've got a couple of things open. One is the CPU-Z, just to show you what the system is, and it matches up with what I said earlier. The second one is the Crystal Disk speed mark, and this will give us a sort of benchmark to work from. It takes a few minutes to go through, but it'll give us an idea of what we're working from, and we can compare it later on once we've finished doing the actual switchover itself. I suspect we're probably going to get speeds of roughly about 100 megabits per second, but we'll see once it clicks up. So I've just trimmed out the actual time, so there we go, just a bit of a cut there just to make it a bit easier. So you can see it's getting about 80 megabits per second on the read and about 65 on the write. Now Crucial does quite a good partnership with Acronis. They allow you to download a version of Acronis. So you go to their Crucial website and look under SSD store, and you'll see Acronis True Image underneath there. If you click on that, it'll give you a page to download it from. If you download that and then obviously install it, now this will only work when you've got an Acronis SSD drive plugged in. If you try and open the software when it's not connected, it'll just say one of the drives connected must be an Acronis drive. But this will allow you to clone a copy of your current hard drive over to the new SSD, and that will allow it to work as it was or as it is right now. So it's taking a picture of how it exists right now, and it will transfer it over into the new one. Within this, you just go to Tools. Once it's opened up, you go to Tools, and then you go to Clone Disk. Again, I've done a little bit of editing with this video because it can take a little bit of time for it to go through its pieces. So if you choose Automatic as its clone style, click Next, it'll ask for your source disk, and you obviously have only got one source disk, which is the one currently installed. And then once it's done all its stuff there, you come up with your destination disk, which is obviously needs to be a USB drive. And then once it's finished doing all its bits and pieces, you'll get to this one here, and you just want to check and make sure all those partitions are what you expect them to be. You've got a recovery partition and a few other ones. You've main partition there, and we proceed with that, and this can take a bit of time. So depending on how big your hard drive is and how much data you've got stored on it, it can take quite a bit of time. I think all up for this one, which is a pretty clean install of Windows, it was only about 45 minutes, but you've got a lot of information. Okay, that's it, just finishing up now. It's just synchronizing the operating system, so that it can synchronize Windows to allow it to boot straight to the new hard drive. It just takes a few minutes to finish off. Once this is finished, we need to shut down Windows, unplug anything we've got, and start to take apart the computer. So I'm just going to use the other camera to show you how to take it apart. First of all, we just need to remove the SSD, so we'll just eject that safely and then we can remove it. The next thing will be to shut down Windows completely and turn off the computer. So do the shutdown, wait for it to shut down. Right, now that it's shut down completely, we unplug the power and then we need to turn it over so we can remove the battery. With this model, there's just a wee slide mechanism just there, so you just need something like a toothpick, or I've got a little spudger there they can use. So you slide that aside and it releases the battery, which slides out. And we're just going to turn it back over, and we're just going to hit the power button a couple of times just to get rid of any residual power that might be in capacitors or anything like that, so when we're opening up we've got no risk of any discharge through our fingers or touching anything metal. Next thing is to remove all the back screws. These are probably around about sort of 15 to 20 with this particular model. Unfortunately with this model we have to take all the screws out. We have to take the keyboard off to take the front panel off so we can access the hard drive. If you're fortunate enough to have a model that you can take off just the back plate, it makes it a lot easier. But I've just sped it up here a bit just to show you what we're doing, taking out all the screws, and I'm putting them in sort of a rough pattern of what they're coming out of, so when it comes to putting them back together we know roughly where they've come from, just in case they are a slightly different size. I've had a bit of an issue with one there that just didn't want to come out, and I'll pick it up later on. There we go, back to normal speed again. Just to show you, there's a couple of wee clips for where the keyboard panel comes out. It's quite hard to see. They're just little slots. I'll see if once I've sort of got a better idea, I'll try and point them out to you a bit closer up. But you're going to work along that top edge. You just need something with quite a thin edge to it so you can sort of try and work it out. Sometimes they'll pop by themselves, but I'm just having a wee bit of trouble at the moment trying to get that bit out. You can sort of push them in a little bit and they should release, but sometimes they can be a bit difficult. Something with a fine edge, again with that spudger, can be quite handy to just pop them in a bit. It's just a tiny bit. I'm just pointing them out there to the camera so you can see where they are. And there's another one, you can just see the wee grey bit sticking out. So those little grey bits you need to push in to release the top edge of the keyboard panel. Again, I'm just going to try with the opening tool. You push it in there and just try and get a little release. You run it down. There we go. So it just pops out, and then you can just slowly work your way back across. You can hear the little clips as you go. If you're just gentle with it and just work slowly, you'll get it off eventually. With these, you just need to be careful once you get it to a certain point. You don't just want to pull it off, just ease it back, and you can see there's a couple of ribbons there that we need to remove. One's for the keyboard itself, and the other one I think is for the backlight of the keyboard. The keyboard one itself, which is the bigger one, has a couple of white little clips on either side that you just need to push away from the main connector, and that will release the cable, which then you can slide away. Just need to, yeah, there we go. So just be gentle with it. Next bit is just there's a little flap that you pop up, and once that pops up it usually releases, so we'll put the keyboard somewhere safe. And the next thing is to remove that top panel to allow us access to the motherboard and the hard drive underneath. We've got a couple of connectors for the Wi-Fi and for the trackpad. Again, they're just little pop levers. The cables themselves have usually got little tabs on them that makes it a little bit easier for the grab hold of. But if you just sort of work away at it gently, we should release. There we go. And just making sure there's no other connectors there. So there we go. That's the one for the trackpad. Some of them go from the back and some of them go from the front. Sometimes a bit of just a little thing to try and work out which is which, but once you work out where the lift pad is, it's quite easy. And there we go, just making sure there's nothing else connected. And then we need to find the different screws. They usually got a little arrow or something marked on them to show that's the level that they're connecting at. I think there's about 5 of them. Again, you're just using the Phillips 00 size screwdriver to remove those, and we'll keep a rough idea of what they've come out. I'm pretty sure those are all pretty much the same size, so if you do get them a little bit mixed up, it's not too much of a problem, but you do want to keep them separate from the ones that have come from the bottom, just in case they're a different size. If they are a different size, you don't want to run the risk of going deeper than they were designed and possibly doing damage to the components underneath. I think there was about 5 all up for that one there. And then once we've got all of those screws, just need to double check and make sure you haven't missed any. Now as we start to remove this, we just need to ease it up. This is where you need to be careful that, you know, as you lift it, you don't get too much resistance. If you feel like you're forcing it too much, you may have missed a screw somewhere, and you'll need to go back and just double check you haven't missed anything. Again, you just use the opening tool for some of the little clips around the edge, but it should lift away fairly easily once you've got those clips released. You just give a little, just keep a sort of constant little pressure up, and you should just come away quite easily. There we go, and just lift away gently, just make sure there's nothing connected, and put that somewhere safe to the side. And now we have access to the internals, so you can see the motherboards and a hard drive connected there. Sometimes these hard drives, they have just a little slide mechanism which you just slide them away, which I initially thought that was the case, so you'll see me in a second here try and slide it away, but obviously nothing's moving. I'll just take a bit of a closer look, and I realize that it's just a lift out one that's just got a flexible cable, and you just work that cable free. Just be a wee bit careful when you're disconnecting the cable. You don't want to do anything to damage that cable. If you were, that would be a whole new repair in itself. So if you just grab it by the edges and slide it out, that's usually the best way to do it. And we'll just put that somewhere safe. I'm just going to compare the two hard drives together just to see the thickness of them. Generally speaking, the SSDs are a little bit narrower, or just a little bit shorter, I should say, so they're not as thick. And that's why they include these little spacers in the packet. So we'll just compare the two together once we've got the spacer, and you can see they're pretty much exactly the same size once the spacer is in place. Depending on the age of the old mechanical drive, you may want to sort of put that into an enclosure, and you can use it as a storage device. But you have to realize that it's quite old already by this stage. I think this laptop from memory is a 2012, and it's currently 2019, so it's about 7 years old already. I think it's probably getting pretty close to its end of life. Now we'll disconnect the spacer, just checking the orientation of how that's going to go in. I was going to put the spacer on the bottom to lift it away from the bottom, but after a bit of an inspection of it, we wouldn't get a lot of contact along the front edge where the connector goes. So I've decided to put it on the top, and that means when the top casing comes down, it will hold it into place quite firmly. We don't want that moving around inside once we've finished doing the install of it. Don't want it damaging itself or any components around it. Once you sit on that, we'll just slot the SATA power and data cable back into place. You just take your time and ease it back, and make sure you've got it properly lined up and get it into place. There we go. And then we orientate it back in to make sure we get a nice tight fit. And just give it a gentle pat to make sure it's in place. There we go. And now we'll just start putting it back together once we've got that in place. Just before I close it up, I think I might just try and give it a bit of a clear out of the fan. It's looking a little bit dusty, so I'm just going to lift it up and give it a firm blow through the fan, and just any dust bunnies that have built up there. It's quite a good time to do it since you've got it apart anyway. You're more than welcome to use canned air or some sort of fan. I wouldn't recommend using any sort of compressed air. They're quite delicate wee things, but canned air would do the trick. You can see just at the bottom there's a wee screw that I missed, and now we're just doing the reverse. I've sped it up again just so you can see what I'm doing, but so you're not spending the next 10 minutes watching me just put it back together. You're just doing it in the reverse order of what you pulled it apart. So first in the screws to hold down the front plates, and then we'll reconnect the two connectors that were connected with that, and then we'll reintroduce the keyboard. Again, we're just doing the reverse of that. Just take your time with it and be careful. And we'll just put that back in slot. Just make sure it's nice and level all the way around. And then we're putting the rear screws back in. You just want to tighten these down until they basically stop. Don't want to over tighten them and risk stripping the screws when you tighten them down, just in case you need to take it apart again. It's up to you at this point if you wanted to put it back together or test it at this stage, but I'm pretty confident we're going to be okay. So we'll put the battery back in place, and there we go. So we'll just reconnect the power, and we'll do our first power on. And to give you an idea, this computer used to take about anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute to boot up. So let's get an idea of how quickly it's going to do it now. Well, yeah, okay, I think you can see a bit of a difference there. Getting to desktop within less than 20 seconds, I would say. That's a marked difference. So now that we've got this open, we can just do it, show you that I'm still using the same PC as before, but it's pretty obvious by the desktop icons and shortcuts, but just to show you that it is the same computer that we were using before, and the same RAM and the same processor. And just to bring up going to do the mark test, the crystal mark. So the crystal disk mark test, and then the crystal disk info to show which drive it is. And there's the crystal disk mask mark, and there's the info. So we're running a new SSD, 1 terabyte, and you can see that the power on count is at 3 and the usage is 0. And now we're going to run that mark test again, and I'll bring up the old one so you can compare side by side. We'll just skip out the actual test itself and show you the results in a second. So we can already see there's quite a big difference, and I've just sped it up so it's not taking as long. It does take a few minutes to go through, but you can already see there's a massive difference. So we've gone from 80 to 535 on the read speeds, and 65 to 484 on the write speeds. So we're talking, what, that's about 8 to 10 times faster, so it's quite a big one. And we're just doing one thing. I just wanted to show you that obviously with the Acronis you're still getting Windows, it's still activated. I hope this has been of some help with you if you've got one of these ones, and if you've got any questions and comments, or give me a thumbs up, that'd be great. I hope this has been helpful, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.